What do we got on tap for quarterback?
Oh man. All right. All right. We've got a lot on tap for quarterback. And I simply don't know. By the way, injuries, Anthony Richardson, the only key injury. I'll mention injuries at the top of each position because running back has a ton, so does wide receiver. How do you, unless the ownership is crazy here and you want to go Jalen Hurts against the Giants, which I actually think could be super sneaky, but I hate trying to figure that team out. How do you get away from Jaden Daniels at home against the Carolina Panthers? Tell me.
Amazing spot. I think the easy answer is that you've got Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. You've got other names at the top, but I agree. You take kind of that out of the equation. You look at it independently. He's in a great spot. Now his price, maybe this is where he belongs. This is the quarterback that, without knowing this, I would say he's probably had the biggest increase in price from week 1 to week 7, and rightfully so.
Not Deshaun Watson?
I don't think he can go that direction. I don't know what he started at. He was too irrelevant to begin with.
I mean, I'm kidding, but yeah, he's the same price as Jameis Winston this week, and he's cheaper than 4 other backups.
Yeah, I mean, wow, he is sub 5K. He started at so he's up there. He had an $1,100 change.
That's I'm not suggesting you play him. Trust me. No. The Panthers are just, the thing that could go wrong here would be just that, like they run the football. They run the football and it's a wrap. Like Panthers have allowed a league worst 12 rushing touchdowns, 921 rushing yards. I mean, all in all, they're terrible across the board. Their personnel on defense is just so untalented, Ben, and they already have a litany of injuries. The only way I see Jaden Daniels not working out, like, okay, I'm gonna throw it to you like this, and this may seem hyperbolic. So please tell me if you think that I'm exaggerating in a big way. I want a piece of Washington in every lineup I play this week. Whether it's Brian Robinson, if he's back, whether it's Terry McLaurin, whether it's full out stacks, whether it's full out onslaughts. And I will play the quarterback in those onslaughts. I'm having a really tough time not wanting to just, and it's early in the week, things can change. Having a really tough time not wanting to get some type of exposure pretty much everywhere to this Washington offense.
I'm not going to push back on any of that. I will just throw somewhat devil's advocate because, again, I also want exposure to Washington. All of that's good stuff. Washington, and stay with me here. This is it's not super mega mind, but Washington's actually pretty good. I think they actually might be good.
I do too. And
with that, ironically, I think that it hurts a little Daniel's upside because it goes back to what I said with Goblin of the Week and the Lions. You can't be messing around now. You actually might have some stuff to play for. So, like, you can't have Daniels running like a wild man in games when you're in control. You actually have to keep him upright. You need to do things like that. I worry about if Washington is that good, can they get him to manage the game more, suppress the rushing upside, and lean on skill position players? And when you're 7,600, that's not a good thing.
But that's why I'm saying I don't care if it's Brian Robinson in this game. Like, I want pieces of this team.
100%. I'm simply saying that I do think that we're going to see some games if Washington continues where Daniels is not as electric with his legs.
Oh, I could see that being this one too, but I could also see him throwing for 4 touchdowns.
He's not really doing that though.
What's that?
Like, as good as he's been, he's got 6 passing touchdowns in 6 games.
Yeah, true.
Like, it's not what you think. And I'm not knocking him. He's been unbelievable. He has 0 300-yard passing bonuses, and he's got 6 touchdowns in 6 games. He's gotten there because he's got 4 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah. He also has 6 touchdowns over his last 4 games too, though. Like, his first 2 games, you could see clearly he was getting acclimated here.
But his first game was his best fantasy performance of the whole year.
Yeah. You're right, because he ran. Yeah,
because he
you're right.
ran.
But I'm talking as far as, look, I don't disagree with that at all. I'm just saying I don't see how they don't produce on offense in some form or fashion. That's what I'm saying, right?
We're
And
in
it
lockstep
might not
there.
be the ceiling game from Jaden McDaniels. So maybe it's the Terry one-off. Maybe it's playing Terry and Brian Robinson in the same lineup without Jaden Daniels. I don't think that's insane. The Panthers are allowing 380 yards of offense per game this year. I mean, it's been terrible. You look at passing yards per game. They're what, bottom, it might not even be as bad as you'd think, because yeah, they're 22nd or something, but that's only because teams can run on them at will, right? They can run on them at will. They've allowed on the season rushing yards per game. And I know you could be like, oh, those stats don't matter. These do for the Panthers. They can't stop the run. 153 rushing yards per game. The other thing, though, and I've said this a lot, they pass block extraordinarily well. So Andy Dalton and these guys actually can put some points on the board. The overs have been crushing for Panthers games recently. So
With Atlanta, yeah.
I still like Jaden Daniels, but I'm more to what you're saying. I'm more than open to going like Brian Robinson, assuming he's back, or Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz in some spots. I'm going to want exposure to this Washington team. The Panthers defense is truly dreadful. I mean, they're the worst in the league.
Everything checks out. They're north of a touchdown favorite, healthy total. I just trying to rein it in, and I know we're talking overview a little bit. Trying to rein it into quarterbacks, though, I don't think that Jaden Daniels should be the most expensive quarterback.
Would you say that Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen are two preferred options for you over Daniels?
Yeah, I think all things. Now, again, it's Tuesday. Ownership, things like that will play a factor, but yes.
It's still Daniels for me right now. Who would you take?
Clayton knows.
That's my top tier. Who's yours? By the way, Panthers allowing 34 points per game through 6 games is preposterously high.
Yeah, that's bad. Mine would be Josh Allen.
Josh Allen? Okay. All right. What did Clayton say? Daniels running crazy is what it made him possibly good. Dial that back and they become way average.
I agree with that. I'm talking through a fantasy lens. I think he's fantastic right now at managing the game, but
yeah, I think you guys are looking at it through a different lens than I am, or through a different filter than I am, because I look at someone in Jaden Daniels who, against Baltimore, pretty good game on the road passing, didn't do much rushing. I look at him as a guy that when he needs to throw, he can. He was 26 for 30 for 233 against Arizona, 21 for 23 for 254 and 2 touchdowns against Cincinnati. Like when he's needed to throw the football, he's been dominant. So
both of those games he scored on the ground.
Why can't he score on the ground here? They're not just going to dial it back from the opening, whistle.
I think they're going to dial it back on a macro level.
Okay. Well, then that's where we differ here, and I can understand that.
Oh, I mean, if he keeps up what he's doing, that's what I'm saying. What he's been doing, I don't think is what he's going to continue to do on the ground.
Gotcha. Mid-tier. How about this? There's some, I think it might be a $6,200 Sam Darnold for me. Jordan Love is interesting. Kirk Cousins is interesting against Seattle. That could be a real shootout, and we'll pay attention to that secondary and those injuries for the Seahawks, because that could really open things up for Kirk Cousins. I think that's the type of game where they would skew pass heavy, and I would like to get some of him for sure. Mm-hmm. Jared Goff against Minnesota, but Sam Darnold against Detroit. Listen, I think this is going to be my mid-range guy. He's coming off a brutal game against the Jets. That's a good secondary. Aside from that, he's been good this year. The loss of Aiden Hutchinson it cannot be overstated how big of a loss that is for a pass funnel defense whose weakness is the secondary. It's better than last year, but still their weakness, and the strength is their defensive line and getting pressure on the quarterback. Do you know, Ben, that Aiden Hutchinson leads the league in sacks, pressures, quarterback hits, and hurries, and Detroit already had their bye week? He has played one less game than most every other pass rusher in the league and still leads in every key pass rushing category. And he has got that gruesome leg injury. The loss of Aiden Hutchinson to me cannot be overstated. Not only cannot be overstated, it cannot be overcome no matter who you try to put on that line to replace him. He's irreplaceable. And I think Sam Darnold in this spot could put up very big numbers this week.
No doubt off a bye as well.
Off a bye. Yeah.
Just, I haven't played much Darnold, if any, this year. I just like haven't been sold on a lot of that. Is a good spot for him. A really good spot.
I think this would be the first time I'd go to a Viking stack on my own outside of like Sims giving it to me.
I'm going to go with Geno. Now maybe we could have used him as the low tier. Is that what we're doing? But I just like,
yes, that to me it was. I was counting sub 6K because there are options down there.
Okay. Well, I'm going to save him then. I'll go to Jordan Love. Jordan Love continues to put up numbers, man. He makes mistakes. He almost has like I mean, it's not as crazy as like a Jameis season going, but the guy is just making so many mistakes. And we've seen time and time again. Look at Baker last week. Like when you're throwing interceptions, that's not a bad thing. In fact, a lot of times it's a good thing for your output. So I just look at him in a game pending, it's early in the year, so I'm not as concerned, but you always want to take a peek at the weather. You're in Green Bay. It's a lot worse than being in a dome, but assuming we're good to go there, Jordan Love at 6,900. He checks a lot of boxes, and you have so many stackable options. Probably too many.
It's a good spot. Also, it looks like Dontavian Wicks is going to be out, so you're going to have a slightly more concentrated target share. It definitely helps for Green Bay. Jaden Reed's dealing with an ankle injury. We'll pay attention to that, but if he ends up, being limited throughout the week, that could really, then Jordan Love to me looks even better.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm going Geno. Like I'll save some time. Geno
would be my guy too. A few other guys that I have down there just to throw out, Ben, would be Stafford against the Raiders. That Raiders team is totally lifeless. They're done. They're cooked. It's over. It's over for them.
How did they beat the Ravens?
I don't know. I don't get it. I think Antonio Pierce has lost these guys.
I don't know if he ever had them, but yeah.
He did last season when he was the interim coach. The rah-rah shit, everyone was all about it until you start losing football games. And then it starts to get a little old, I think. What about Dalton, though, at 5,200? Stafford's not my guy, Jordan. I was just throwing players out there. What do you think about Dalton 5,200? I just think when you're playing from behind and you actually have decent pass protection, he's kind of one of those guys that every week at a dirt cheap price point isn't that bad. Like they're a top 5 pass blocking team this year, believe it or not.
It's not that bad. He's playable. He's a statue, much like Stafford. It's more what I always like to ask this question. Like, what are you paying down for? Are you paying down because you think that Dalton is going to have a great game? Okay, that would make sense. Are you paying down because you're saying, I think Dalton can have a good enough game and the savings allows me to get to guys that are going to have an amazing game elsewhere? That makes sense.
Bingo.
Okay, so it's the latter.
Justin Jefferson against Detroit without Aiden Hutchinson. Kyron Williams against the Raiders. I love some pay-up options this week. And I think that it's very possible. Look, I'm not sold on anything. It's Tuesday. This is just our foundational kind of preliminary look at this. I think the Andy Dalton, Deontay Johnson combination is pretty good in a spot like this. You want to run it back with a Brian Robinson. You want to run it back with a Terry McLaurin. I really don't hate it. There are some good pay-up options that I really like. And if Dalton's playing from behind, a 20 spot from him could easily put you over the top. So that's kind of my logic here. He's very cheap. I think he's cheaper than he should be.
That makes sense.
And they have to throw the football. So give me Dalton at 5,200.